Welcome, everybody. Today we are continuing our series of Research Talks Qualitative Scholar Conversations. We're lucky to be joined today by Keon Gilbert and Alison Hamilton, who will co-teach a course at our summer intensive this year. The course is offered Monday and Tuesday, July 22nd and 23rd. It's a new course offering for us at the summer intensive. The title is Grant Writing, Designing and Writing Qualitative Proposals for Different Types of Funders. I'm Maietta and president of ResearchTalk. I'm joined today by Jeff Petruzzelli, who will give his title at ResearchTalk.
Hi, I'm Jeff Petruzzelli. I am a qualitative research specialist at ResearchTalk. Great to see everybody.
Thank you, Jeff. And also our other colleague who is a ResearchTalk consultant and also has an important title at the Odum Institute. I will let him introduce himself before we move on and learn more about each of our qualitative scholar instructors.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Mihas. I'm the Assistant Director of Qualitative and Mixed Methods Research at the Odum Institute for Research and Social Science at UNC Chapel Hill.
Great. Thank you so much, Paul. And then Alison and Keon, if we could start just learning a little bit more about each of you. Alison, I guess we'll go alphabetical order by first name. And if you don't mind starting, and then Keon, you can follow. Just a little bit about yourself, and specifically, if we could hear a little bit of your story as you evolved as a qualitative researcher. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I'm Alison Hamilton. I am an anthropologist, and I've been based at UCLA, where I'm a professor in psychiatry, and at the VA, where Veterans Administration, where I'm a research career scientist and implementation research director. I've been a consultant with ResearchTalk for over 20 years, and the evolution has been substantial over a couple of decades. Having been trained as an anthropologist, and I would say pretty classically trained, if you will, with a focus on medical and psychological anthropology, and having been trained in ethnographic methods, and I've just always had more of an applied orientation to the work that I do and to the work that I really like to do, particularly within health services, and that has meant quite a bit of evolution from my training as a social scientist to kind of using the methods that I learned in more kind of traditional anthropological methods and applying those to pretty, busy, demanding, multiple project types of portfolios, all of which are funded by soft money. So that's how I came to be one of the people teaching this course, is because that's what I spend a lot of my time doing and thinking about how we can shape and propose and do qualitative work and rigorous and interesting and compelling qualitative work within more of that applied context that I find myself in. So hopefully that's enough for now, and more will probably come up along the way. I'll turn it over to Keon.
Let me just ask you one quick follow, Alison, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
If there was one project that you could choose to mention to people in short order, just a couple of sentences that really hit a special place for you, what would that project be?
It would be a project that I did, was funded by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. It was a K award. For people who don't know what that is, it's a career development award offered by the National Institutes of Health, and it focused on women's health, which is really my area of specialty, and substance use, in particular methamphetamine use. And the reason why I that one comes to mind is that it allowed me to kind of marry some of the methods work that I love to do, particularly person-centered interviewing, with some of the more applied work that I was mentioning before. So I actually proposed in that work to become more of a mixed methodologist and get an MPH along the way. So it gave me an opportunity, besides the, just the sheer, wonder of doing these very, very in-depth, open-ended interviews, it also gave me this opportunity to bring in and develop some new skills in mixed methods work that really expanded my repertoire of method skills and kind of opened a lot of doors to new types of studies and to thinking about mixed methods in addition to qualitative only types of projects too.
Wonderful. Thank you, Allison.
Sure.
Keon, yes, let's learn more about you too, my friend.
Great. Well, thank you all. Pleasure to be here and to chat with you all and to discuss the course along with Allison. So I am Keon Gilbert. I'm an associate professor in the College for Public Health and Social Justice at St. Louis University, in our department, newly named or renamed Department of Behavioral Science and Health Equity. The health equity is the new part of our department name, which is pretty cool, and sort of really does fit nicely within a college named the College for Public Health and Social Justice. So it's really nice to sort of have that marriage between the two names. I'm also currently the executive director. At St. Louis University's Institute for Healing, Justice, and Equity. And if that's not enough roles and titles and things, I am also a fellow at the Brookings Institution. And what I do sort of across all those spaces and places is think largely about strategies and approaches to address and achieve health equity, and also thinking more specifically about some of those strategies being community engaged, to focus on Black communities more often, but other health disparity communities, and thinking about ways to integrate methods, both qualitative and quantitative, in projects as much as possible. I think one of the interesting things about sort of just qualitative research in and of itself is sort of recognizing and understanding the relationship it does have and can have with quantitative methods. And I think those are things I try to talk about in projects, talk about with students, talk about with other researchers, talk about with practitioners that I may be working with in projects. And also, how do you think about supporting that work through different types of grant mechanisms? I think also becomes really important. And I try to do that as often and as frequently as possible in the work that I do, and also having the opportunity to not only teach in the research summer intensive. This is the first time I'll be teaching this particular course, but in other courses that are focused on community engagement with marginalized populations has been really important. So it'd be really nice to sort of help others think through how do you take some of that information and package it in a grant proposal.
Wonderful. And then a similar question that I asked Allison, if there's one project that had a qualitative component or were solely qualitative that holds a good place in your heart, if you could give us a short couple of sentence summary of that project, that would be great. And then we'll turn attention to the course.
Yeah, so actually one project that has been really, really exciting is, I've had several, but I'm going to talk about a more recent one that's wrapping up. This is a project that I worked on with New York University's School of Public Health and their Anti-Racism Center. And we were asked by the Commonwealth Fund to think about how we can learn from social change movements, and social change movements, specifically criminal justice reform, LGBTQ plus, and tobacco policy reform, as a way of helping to think through or think about lessons learned, best practices, strategies, setbacks, pitfalls from those other social movement, social change campaigns that might inform a campaign to think more about racism in health, anti-racism in health, anti-racism in healthcare. And it was really exciting because it was mostly qualitative, where we did stakeholder interviews with folks who represented different types of organizations, grassroots, national professional associations or advocacy groups, scholars, to really think through some of these strategies that have worked to advance social issues in those three areas. And part of what made it really exciting is having the opportunity to talk to individuals who are either sort of new to their area of advocacy, as well as others who have been working in the space in a number of different ways for decades. And it was really nice to have sort of a multi-generational, multi-region, multi-identity perspective on social change strategies, and really learning that a lot of the work that's happening is transformational and intersectional, and learning how that is taking place in individual movements and across social change movements.
Both of you, it's such thoughtful and powerful work, and we could schedule separate conversations about both of those projects and your work. But we are honored to be having the two of you teaching together this year. You both have contributed a lot to the Summer Intensive over our 21-year history. You both have been a part of the event for a very long time. So we just want to make sure you know how much we appreciate each of you. So it's great to have you together. So when it comes to this course, the grant writing, designing and writing qualitative proposals for different types of funders, talk to us about the origins, development of the course. Whoever wants to start, we just want to give people a little bit more than they can read in the description.
I mean, I think I'll just share a few thoughts, and then Keon, hope you add more. I think, you know, as we've already shared, we both have a lot of experience with writing grants, and your vision, Ray, of bringing us together because of, I think, the complementary nature of a lot of what we do is important, but also the differences in the types of work that we do and the types of funding agencies that we orient toward really allows us to cover more ground with this course. And so in designing it, putting it together, you know, I wanted to touch on a word that you used, Keon, about packaging. And I think that was one of the things that we really connected on early, was this idea that what we do with grant writing, it involves storytelling, it involves packaging, it involves, you know, really kind of carrying an idea through every component of what these diverse types of proposals really require. And so I felt like even in, you know, writing the description, thinking about it together, it was a real meeting of the minds of, oh, I do this and you do that, and we both do these other things, and we both know how important these different components are. And so there's that already that nice synergy of, you know, sort of our foundational skills and techniques that we bring to doing this type of work, but also, you know, different ways of doing things, different considerations we have for different audiences. So that was really important to conceptualizing the course as well. And I would just add that we both do a lot of mentoring too. And so, you know, helping others to do this, it's not just about, you know, we do it for ourselves and for our own work and research portfolios, but also, you know, really fostering this set of skills in others, I think is really important for both of us. So that is going to be really fun to work on together too.
Yeah, thank you for starting that sort of discussion about the course, how it came together, and being the newbie to the course. I'm definitely excited about working with you, and as you said, sort of thinking about how do we convey to others and start the process of mentoring others about the importance, relevance, and sort of possible different styles of putting together qualitative proposals. I recall being a graduate student and essentially in many different ways, always being told that qualitative methods wasn't enough. And sort of even at times being told, well, you can't get a grant that's going to be all qualitative. And to be, I think, in a time in sort of both history as well as the different ways people are approaching or thinking about research, and many more people want to do qualitative research of some sort, some kind, whether they know how to do it or not, or whether they really want to include someone that has spent a lot of time thinking about it and practicing the method and the art and the method of it, but recognizing how important it has become over time in grant proposals and projects, and not just always an afterthought of after when someone's done a survey and they're like, well, we can't really explain some of these factors or what's happening, and maybe we should go talk to people. That the reality is that's coming first now. Like, maybe we should talk to people to learn about other stuff we want to learn or know or test in a project. And so it's been refreshing in that way. And so it seems like some of those battles are being won. And I think it's important that we learn from each other how to communicate that to those who are funders. And that's a difficult task. It's a difficult job. And I often sort of think about writing grants and communicating with funders is, if you can think of sort of your form of academic seduction, this is it. And what someone reads or likes or dislikes can really affect or influence whether or not you get funded. And, you know, definitely grant writing is a very important piece and part of that academic seduction process.
Beautiful.
Agreed.
So we'll circle back a second time to check in with my colleagues. We'll check in now, and Paul or Jeff, if you have anything you want to follow up at this point, feel free. And then we'll check in with you one more time after the next topic we'll segue to momentarily. But I wanted to check to see if Paul or Jeff had any question for Alison and Keon.
Well, I guess I wanted just to raise the topic of storytelling and how storytelling breathes life into everything we do as researchers. And your course description does mention like keeping a thread throughout the proposal or the grant writing process, and it is a type of storytelling. I wonder if you could just address that for a bit.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I love the idea of academic seduction, and I think what we're aiming to do in proposals is take our audiences on a journey with us. And, that means letting people know why they might want to be on this journey with us, why it matters, and what's going to happen along that journey, who's going to be part of it, what shape it's going to take, theoretically at least, and what it's going to result in. And, when we start with proposals, I rarely, if ever, have the story down. It's like, it's a process, and more often than not, a real co-produced process where many people are involved in figuring out how do we get to that story, so that when someone's reading it and deciding if they buy it and they want to buy it, it's clear and it's compelling and it has the potential for impact. And I remember even when we were writing the description, Keon, that we were both kind of reflecting on how the threads of the story are in every component. It's not just in your aims or in your narrative, it's in your budget, it's in your timeline, it's in your bio sketch, it's in all these different pieces, where ultimately when a proposal comes together and is successful, I think it's because that story is very coherent, very cohesive, and whoever is digesting it buys the idea that you and your team are the right people, the right people to accomplish this story. So I just feel like it's such an accessible way to approach the process, and And when I'm mentoring people and writing proposals, sometimes their first proposals, I often start with that question. What story do you want to tell? And what story do you want to be known for? And let's work toward that. And typically when people are newer at this, they share what they want to do. And I'm like, okay, but that's 4 stories. And we can't do 4 stories. We can't propose 4 stories. We got to get to 1, and we can do other ones later. But let's start with one that really drives you, motivates you, that you feel passionate about, that you can really convey in a way that people are like, wow, this person has to do this, and I want to, or my agency wants to support this person. So it has that, that, as one of my colleagues says, that burning platform. And really, like, you just feel in the writing, and it can be emotional. You feel in the writing that this is something that has to be done, and getting to that is not easy. And I think, one of the things that we'll really work on in the course is really practical ways to get there. So it sounds abstract, and it can be abstract, but there's also ways that you can get really good at this. So there's that practical piece of it too.
Beautiful. Yeah. Keon, if you wanted to add, feel free. I also want to just check with Jeff to see if there's anything he wanted to bring in now or loop in later. So Keon, anything you want to add to what Alison just put forth?
Maybe a couple of quick things. I think part of thinking about not only the story that sometimes there's a difference in the story that you want to tell and the story that someone wants to hear.
Mhm.
And sometimes that can feel disingenuous. And in terms of thinking about, well, I really want to do this and I want to do it this way. And there may be strategies to include that in proposals, but it may not be the story that a funder wants to support in a way that you are constructing it.
Mhm.
And part of that is thinking about what are the priorities, past, current, future, of a funding agency, whether it's federal, nonprofit, philanthropic, sometimes even individual donors, that they also have priorities that may be completely misaligned with what you want, but they could be aligned in some ways with sort of telling the right kind of story. And I think that's often a struggle, especially early on when you are thinking about grants and thinking about sort of the overwhelming process and tasks associated with grant writing. It can definitely be a little bit, it can make you feel disingenuous to the work that you want to do, and even sometimes the populations that you may be working with. So I think it's important to even sort of, hopefully we'll get lots of chances to talk about that, because it is part of the process in terms of thinking about what is it that I want to say, but what is it that they're interested in reading or maybe more receptive to, and how do you sort of bridge that gap?
That's really,
Yeah.
It just makes me think like that there's a strategy involved too. What you're describing resonates for me as there's a strategic way of approaching this, where that's something that you can learn and get attuned to the priorities that you're trying to be responsive to, and how can we be strategic about that. So I love that point. I think it's super important to what we do in this area.
Right. That content's just so empowering for folks. It's wonderful. Jeff, do you want to loop in now or come in with some thoughts as we move one more question, and then we'll kind of close up? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think Paul and I were on the same wavelength, because I was going to go to storytelling as well. But as you were both just speaking, I was wondering what role, I know you do mention community engagement in the description, and I know that's something that's very important to both of you. So I was wondering, as you were talking about kind of figuring out what story to tell, what role does community engagement play in that, and how do you use what you've learned from the community to kind of help you with your grant writing process?
Great question. You want to take it first, Keon?
Sure, I'll start. Thank you. It's critically important to me in the work that I'm doing, and I think even also in this stage of my career, and doing a lot of community engagement in particular ways can be otherwise time consuming early in your career because it just takes longer. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when you are on a 10-year clock, that is a concern. And in previous courses about community engagement, we talk about different types of partnerships, different types of relationships that you have with community partners and the different roles and functions of those community partners, community members. And it's the same sort of thing that happens when you're preparing proposals. And if you have long-term relationships, then it becomes a little bit easier to make sure that the community has time to review things, that maybe if they want to write, that they can. It's a little bit harder if you're new to a partnership or relationship. And I think that becomes important to sort of think about the stage of your relationship with the community agency, community members, in terms of how they are going to help shape and inform the proposal. They could decide to trust you and you write it and they review it, provide a letter of support, or recognize that they are an important part financially of the award. And I do think that there's some shifts and changes in funding, and thinking about how do community agencies, community groups receive more resources or even are the lead agency. And I think that shift and change has been driven by the community itself and recognizing that they have incredible strengths and talents and also can be the leaders of grants. And so many of them, their capacities have shifted and expanded where they can manage large awards these days. And I think those are important things to think about, think through, and possibly, help others as they're thinking about ways to include community engagement or sort of make it a community-driven process.
Yeah, those are all such great points. And I think I agree that there are a lot of changes happening in the funding environment in relation to community engagement, to the extent where now there are mechanisms for funding that you just simply can't even apply for unless you have established relationships, which, as you mentioned, Keon, can take a lot of time to be genuine, productive, real, authentic relationships and mutually beneficial relationships. And so I think that's really exciting in research that we are shifting generally, at least in some areas, toward engagement more front and center in the process of thinking about grants, conceptualizing them, writing them, doing them, who benefits, who's leading, et cetera. And I feel like in my own work, I'm less and less inclined to do work that isn't heavily engaged, if not driven by the communities that I'm trying to and hoping to and intending to serve, to the point where I want to hear what their ideas are for research. How can I incorporate those ideas into what I'm able to do and the skills that I have to offer? So it's not just, hey, I'm coming to you with my idea, what do you think? But like, maybe you could actually, we could actually talk about your ideas and infuse those or center those in the work. And I think your earlier point, Keon, about being at a point in your career where that's possible is also really key. Because we just don't always have the luxury of heavily community driven work because of the relationships that we need to establish. But I think we can be, and we can really foster more intentionality around that, especially because there are more and more opportunities in this space. And so maybe some of the ways that we previously had to go about more community engaged work and proposals are, shifting, and more things are kind of opening up in terms of it not being something that we can do more down the road in our careers, and see, can we start that type of work a little bit earlier in people's career trajectories as well. So I think that's going to be a really exciting component to the course, because I'm guessing that folks who take this course may be very much in that space or wanting to be in that space. And so I feel like that's going to be a really, really super interesting, exciting aspect of the course.
Yeah, if I could maybe just add something else, I think part of what's happening and I guess really has been shaping in community engaged work is really the recognition, and you mentioned this in terms of, well, what is it that you want to study, is that asking communities what they're interested in likely is going to get you something very different than the questions that we came up with as researchers, and talking to other researchers. And that becomes a little bit far more exciting and far more possibly impactful to the work itself. But also being mindful that the types of grants that we as academics, researchers think about are different types of awards that communities may want to write grants for, and making sure that there's not part of your comments about mutual benefit, that piece of mutual benefit is also there in reciprocity in supporting them. And maybe it's a $5,000 award or, $2,500 award, but they want some of that practice as well of putting together proposals for funding that goes directly to them and not funneled through the university mechanisms and things. And so being mindful that there are other types of grant proposals that communities center and think about, I think is another important piece to this.
Can I just make one more comment? We could probably talk for many hours, but
Yeah, this is great.
yeah, I feel like this is more in your wheelhouse, Keon, but I was also thinking about policy engaged research and how, at least I see on the federal side, that there's a lot of increasing emphasis on impacts on policy changes, et cetera. And just thinking about what engagement means at the policy level too, which of course I know is one of your areas of expertise. And so just thinking about community in a really, like, which communities, and thinking about community in a really broad and open sense of our constituents. And, there are so many different ways we can go about engagement, including engagement at the policy level, which I think is really growing too. And that's also potentially going to be a very exciting aspect of the course.
As you mentioned, Alison, this is a great conversation that could certainly continue. But there's just one thing we want to say, and then we'll just see if anyone wants to offer anything in closing. But one other question is, so folks will take the class, and then some of them may continue learning more at the intensive, others will move immediately to their desk. And if each of you could just offer kind of a vision you have for something you would love to see someone integrate from the course, or a way to either conceive or approach grant writing in a unique way because of what the two of you offer, what would that be? And we don't have to go in depth on this one, but just, yeah, if you can kind of give that vision of, here's what I would love to hear or know that you're working into your grant writing approach.
If you don't mind, I'll start. Yeah. And I'll use the words of Allen Iverson, but with the opposite meaning: practice, practice, practice. And when I thought about that earlier in my career and wanting more experience with writing grants and writing with communities, it really has taken lots of practice and lots of failures I don't think I'm, incredibly successful now, but you do sort of approach it a little bit differently in thinking about the different kinds of proposals and different agencies. But it really has taken the practice of writing them and recognizing that you can draw from papers, book chapters that you prepared in ways to sometimes even facilitate the writing or even expedite the writing. And so that's one of the, I think, most important things that I often reflect on at this point in my career about sort of what makes it easier, or what makes the process sort of go, because it's still difficult, but practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. And I would say, to add to that, absolutely agree. I would add passion, 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 that it's really about bringing what you care about to the writing. I think it comes through when people care about what they're writing about. And so, when I'm helping people to write perhaps their first grant, or they're kind of newer to the process, we really try to get at what motivates that person to want to write this. And of course, there is that strategic aspect to this of, you want your work to be aligned with the agencies and institutions that you hope will fund it. But you have to care about it. You have to bring that care and that passion to the writing, because it's gonna make it just a little bit easier, and it's hard to begin with. So you really need to feel like, yes, I want to spend the hours and hours and hours that it's going to take, and weeks and months that it's going to take for me to write this. And if I get it, I want to actually spend the 5 years doing it, or the 3 years doing it, or the 2 years doing it. So, even thinking ahead, like, am I going to want to invest a big chunk of my life in this, from the development all the way through to the execution and beyond? That kind of puts it in perspective. And I hope that when people take our course, they think about, what do they care about? What are they motivated to do in their proposals, and that we can really foster that through our own experiences, like you said, Keon, not all of which, and probably not even half of which, are successful. So having that, realizing that just because your passion might not be met every time with successful funding, that you're learning from that, and you're figuring out, okay, how am I going to do this better the next time, and the next time, and the next time? So it does require very thick skin, and a lot of resilience, so to speak, if we want to use that word. But it's a long haul, and so I figure, if you're going to engage in this long haul, you really want to care about what you're engaging in. So I hope that is what people walk away with as well.
And unfortunately, the clock is dictating that we need to wrap up. But I want to thank my colleagues, Paul Mihas and Jeff Petruzzelli, and of course, Alison Hamilton and Keon Gilbert. What I want to just say to both of you is thank you for the valuable contributions today. But I just want to really acknowledge the contributions you've made for both the organizations involved with the intensive, but more so over the years. I haven't just gotten to know both of you, but I've got to know, for each of you, folks you've mentored, folks you've worked closely with, your colleagues, and the effect that each of you has had that you may not even be aware of is just so powerful. And what you each have brought to the field directly and through the effect you've had on others just is immeasurable. And it's awesome and incredible that that's going to continue. We're honored to give you this platform, and really look forward to your course on July 22nd and 23rd. So thank you both. And thank you again to Paul and Jeff. And we look forward to continuing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You.